Welcome to the PingCast by PingSkills. I'm Jeff Plum.
And I'm Alois Rosario.
And in this episode, we want to talk a bit more about the Commonwealth Games, which Alois recently attended. So, in the last episode, you started talking about how you were mingling with the tennis team and their coaches, and that was a good experience. Can you tell us about that?
I mean, I think any experience you can get from other sports can be really useful. So we actually shared a room with the tennis officials.
Okay, excellent.
So the coaches and their manager.
Yep.
And gleaned a lot of information about racket sports. Tennis and table tennis skills can be quite related. So we were out there, in the lounge room, just doing some tennis swings, and for all the tennis players, just pardon my bad swing, but then we also talked about table tennis technique and skills with them, and just shared some ideas of different things that we could do, and why they don't use the wrist as much as we do, and why we do use the wrist.
Okay. So did they talk about that? Why don't they use the wrist in tennis?
Well, they talked about it being too inconsistent, and also I think the heaviness of the ball makes it difficult for them to use their wrist too much.
Okay.
So whereas we can because the ball's so light that you can use your wrist a little bit more.
A little bit more, and especially on the backhand, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's 8 o'clock.
That's just our computer telling you what the time is. It's 8 o'clock.
So it's, as I said, interesting to just look at their forehand technique and their backhand technique, and why there is a difference between their forehand and backhand technique. So they teach the forehand technique as finishing right over with the elbow finishing high, whereas the backhand technique finishes up fairly high. So we asked that question, why...
So that's for tennis, not for
tennis,
table tennis.
For tennis. So why is it so different? Because you'd think that maybe it's a mirror image. And they talked about just the movement of the actual arm muscle. So here, the arm moves in this direction. Here, it's difficult to turn your arm over and your elbow to come up over that way.
Okay.
So
how does that apply to table tennis, or does that teach us anything about?
Yeah, I think that one thing it taught me was there needs to be some differences between the forehand and backhand, so they won't necessarily be mirror images of each other.
Yep.
So with whatever strokes you're doing, there will be some differences. With the way you use your wrist is one. So with the backhand, you can use your wrist a lot more to get back and forward.
It's just more natural on the backhand for the wrist to...
Yeah, so the wrist goes back a lot easier like that, whereas on the forehand it doesn't.
No.
You can't go back as far. You can go forward to complete the wrist action, but obviously the way your joints move, limits the movement.
Yeah, and then that would, and it does. It just seems like that's going to be more consistent on the backhand side.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, those sort of things are interesting. We also had a few discussions about their programs and it's interesting. Like there's a lot of similarities between sports, and just reading different books as well, you'll see that a lot of sports have similar issues to table tennis. Even sports with bigger budgets have similar people issues, I suppose.
Okay,
that you need to
Every
always be.
sport's going to have some people issues.
That's right, that you need to be aware of. And I'm a big fan of autobiographies.
Yep.
And reading lots of sporting autobiographies, again, like the same issues seem to come up all the time.
Yep.
With the same issues about you just need to change the names and change the sport and change the racket. But things.
So what's the last autobiography you read?
That's a good question. The last one.
Was it? Have you read Agassi's book?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, really interesting. Open by Andre Agassi. Yeah.
I'll have to get it off you. I haven't read that one yet.
Oh well, yeah. We'll wait and discuss that once Jeff's read it.
Okay, look out for it on the PingCast. Discussion of Open by Agassi.
Yep.
So what sort of technology do they use to analyse their players?
Yeah. So a lot of our analysis, I suppose, is done by eye. They've got some really good programs that they use that can do some freeze framing. The other really nice feature I saw was overlaying. So they had a good player so one of the top players in the world.
Yep.
And they were able to overlay footage of one of their juniors.
Yep.
And just see the similarities in their technique.
Okay.
So as top player in the world is playing, junior's playing, and you'll see that that their arm might start here as a junior, and the adult player starts there. So it becomes really visible. Even that sort of degree.
You can really tell where the stroke's not up to scratch.
Exactly. So
Okay. And then how does that help the player themselves? Do they sit there and watch that footage and then try and correct it?
Yep, so the player's going to watch that footage. So the coach will go through it, analyse it, see where the differences are, and then they can actually take some snapshots of it and even just email it to the players.
Wow.
Or if you've got the player there, you can go through that with them and say, okay, Jeff, your forehand starts here, and Waldner's forehand starts here, and so you need to change that a little bit.
Yep, okay. That's interesting. And I guess it's interesting in a lot of ways because I guess it sounds really helpful, and I think it will be, but I guess to some point you don't want everyone to end up with exactly the same forehand. And
Interesting. They've done a lot of analysis, and there are more similarities between players than differences.
Wow.
So, talking about players like Federer and Nadal, so they put through these images, and they hit the same points for a lot of their stroke.
So even though to us, to the eye, they look completely different, when you analyse it through this software, you still see a lot of consistencies between all the top players.
Absolutely. So so we had some overlays of a whole heap of different players.
I guess it makes sense because when you see a good player and you see them hit a really good forehand, you know it straight away. Like if you're watching a good player, you go, "Wow, that's a good forehand." It's not hard to subconsciously know that that's a good forehand.
Yes. And I think this just highlights those things. So at PingSkills we talk a lot about the start and finish points.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
So I think what we'll start to see as we start to use this software a lot more is we'll start to see the starts and finishes of all the top players.
Yep.
And we'll be able to then analyse it even better and work out what's ideal.
What's the perfect start and finish position?
Yep. So,
so that's what we do in a lot of our coaching is we say this is the start position and this is the finish position. And why does that work so well?
Yep. So the start and finish are critical because there's definite points that you can work on.
Yep.
Especially this is especially so when you're learning a skill, because you can set up your start position. So you set up your legs and you set up your start position. Then all you need to focus on is getting to the finish position. If you get to that finish position from the start position, then your racket will follow a pretty good line.
Yep.
So
then as you practice that, you'll perfect that.
Absolutely. So even if initially your swing does this, eventually it'll start to get smoother.
Okay.
Another feature of this software was that you can actually track the middle of the racket, for example. So and then draw a line, so you can see that your forehand stroke looks like this, and someone else's forehand stroke looks like this.
Okay.
So then you've got a line on the screen there that's really easy for you visually to tell what your stroke looks like.
Okay, it sounds really good.
Yep. So, watch out for that. That's something that PingSkills is going to start to delve into.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right, so you're hanging out with the tennis players and learning from them, and that's really interesting. But tell us a little bit about the village life. What was it like there at the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, well, I think one of the really nice things is just being part of that bigger team, and you start to see some of the bigger names in sport that you don't necessarily see. You know, a lot of the swimmers, the Australian swimmers, obviously are high profile, really up there in the world. Yep. And just seeing how they operate day to day. Yep. I think just seeing that, wow, they are actually human as well. They're in the food hall. They're
just like everyone else.
Just like everyone else, and it's good to see what they eat. Just sort of sneak over and have a bit of a look. Okay. But I think just humanising the top players and sports people in Australia and the world,
Yep.
it makes it a little bit more tangible and interesting.
Yeah, and I guess it's good. Yeah, I guess it's good for people to get an insight into that and say, well, that's something that I can achieve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just the village in general. So we were in units. So we were on the 8th floor of our units, and it was all reasonably well bunched together.
Okay.
But still, the village was quite big. So to go for a walk, we needed to sort of head out, and you could do a bit of a walk around the village. And
Yep. And what about the rooms? What did you have in the rooms?
Yeah, the rooms were good. We had like a unit. So there was a unit with 3 twin share rooms coming off the unit, all with their own en suites and things. But that made for an interesting dynamic of players together and in our case coaches together. So
Yep.
Yep.
And did you have TV and internet access and all that kind of
there
stuff?
was a TV there. The internet access was dodgy to say the least.
Okay.
But we got there.
Yep.
And so all the creature comforts.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yep.
All right. Well, there we go. Should we move on?
I think so.
All right. We want to talk about the Ask the Coach section of our website now. As part of the PingCast, we're often going to talk about a question. And recently we had one from our readers, which was, how often should you use your best serve? So I'm going to let Alois answer that.
This is one that comes up quite a bit in coaching, when you're coaching during matches. Often players will say, well, I'm going to just save that serve for when it's an important situation. And I always say to them, don't do it. Just get out there and use your serve often. Like, if you can use your serve often and give your opponent trouble, then maybe it won't get to that important situation.
Okay,
maybe,
so you'll already get to a lead. They won't. Yeah, their confidence will be down.
So this happened at the Commonwealth Games.
Yep.
One of the players that I was coaching.
Yep.
Which she came off after playing a match, and I said, but you did this serve and they had trouble with it, so why didn't you do it again? And she said, well, I was just saving it, and
she never got to use it again.
Never got to use it, and so we focused on that a little bit.
Yep.
And then the following couple of matches, she started to find a serve and use it and really hone in on it, and she had some good results as a result of that. So remember, if you've got a serve that is good, a serve that's effective against someone, use it. If you think of it from the opposite side, if someone serves a serve to you and you have trouble with it, the last thing that you want to see next is that serve again.
Absolutely, yeah. You're praying that they won't do that serve again.
Yeah. So they pull out the easier serve for you, so you have some comfortable points, and then they pull it out again. You've had 2 or 3 comfortable points. So if you find a serve, use it lots. And can't emphasise that enough.
There you go. Some really good advice. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of the PingCast by PingSkills. If you've seen us on YouTube, don't forget to head over to our website, www.pingskills.com. We'd love for you to leave a comment on our blog. Tell us what you like, what you thought was good about the show, and what you'd like to see in other shows. We really want to make this fun and informative, and we hope you're really going to like it. So head over to the website, leave a comment, and let us know what you think.
So what's that website?
www.pingskills.com.